There's a saying in fantasy football that the key to success is drafting good players on good teams. But in Dynasty, there's a little bit more of a nuance to that. So today, what we are going to do is we are going to give you our best, our favorite picks in each round of your Dynasty startup leagues and a little bit of insight into how you should be balancing youth and high upside versus the steady Eddie veteran production. So what we're going to do, fellas, is we're going to have a fun little exercise here. We're going to go round by round and each give our favorite pick in each round of Dynasty startup drafts. You're going to see some overlap here if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio feed, you're going to hear some same players. So Cameron, for example, you and I in round one share the same player. Our favorite pick in round one is CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I think we get lost a little bit in the fact that Dak Prescott missed the back half of this season when it comes to CD. We look at it and we go, oh man, 17 fantasy points a game, which is still phenomenal. Like, his down year is 17 and a half fantasy points per game, which, is like a point behind what Justin Jefferson had, who we consider a top one wide receiver, and they're the same age. But Dak's going to be around at least through 2026 with CD, with the way that their contracts are structured. So he's got stability there. He was phenomenal in 2023. And I just continue to see him building on it. And the fact that you can get him at the 108, going 5 spots behind Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, that's why I think he's the best pick in this round.
And the Cowboys didn't draft a wide receiver in the class this year. So it is CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert. Brandon Cooks isn't on this team anymore. So it's CeeDee Lamb. If you want to throw out Jake Ferguson, go for it. They don't really have a run game. It's Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Jaden Blue. I mean, it's going to be the Dak and CD show all season in Dallas until they potentially bring in somebody else. But the fact that they didn't do so in the NFL draft is a little bit surprising and maybe even a little bit telling to me as well. But Ty, your favorite pick in the first round goes one pick ahead of CeeDee Lamb, and that's Malik Nabers.
Yeah, I am all in on Malik Nabers just because I think the question to ask with Nabers is, can he make up into being the top 5, top 3 guy that you are targeting at the top of your fantasy drafts? Like, it's Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Can Malik Nabers be the next guy up, even with the list of running backs that you've got at the top as well? And I think he can. I mean, the Giants, for as bad as it was last year, they showed that they are going to do whatever it takes to get the ball into his hands. Not only did they not take anybody in the draft, but they brought back Darius Slayton. Wan'Dale Robinson is still in the starting lineup for this team. And now it's an improved quarterback position with Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart, in whichever order that goes throughout this season. But I think, again, this offense is going to try to get the ball to Malik Nabers. He's the playmaker. He's the go-get-it kind of guy. He's the do-everything wide receiver that you want to target in fantasy.
If everybody could go out there and get a Darius Slayton contract for the production that he puts out there, I mean, golly, I don't know how that dude gets paid $30 million and he's out there just running routes, man. But it's similar to CeeDee Lamb, right? It's Malik Nabers and who else? No disrespect to Wan'Dale, but he's a PPR merchant. We saw him fade off pretty quickly in the back half of the season. The one thing I am a little bit concerned with the Giants offense, is Russell Wilson is much more of the moonball type. He targets the sidelines. He does not throw over the middle of the field. So I'm a little bit worried for Malik Nabers' production, but that's so much of a nearsighted thing than it is a Malik Nabers is just that dude. Like, he's just that good. So you cannot go wrong with Malik Nabers at the 107 as well. Before we go any further, though, I want to drop a quick stat for the viewers, because I discovered the other day that 87% of people who watch our videos aren't subscribed to our channel. So we could quick fix that right now if you want. Hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell as well. If you are a fantasy football fanatic, we are with you all season long with redraft content, best ball content, Dynasty content. We go live once a week right now. We'll be going live twice a week eventually, but we have content coming for you all season long to make sure you win your fantasy football leagues of all varieties. So again, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well, so you'll be alerted when all of our new videos are up and when we go live on top of it. Let's jump to round 2 now, fellas. Cam and Ty, you both share the same pick here. That's Drake London, who goes at the 206. And Ty, I'll just come right back to you. Why is Drake London your preference here?
Just because of this new offense that's in Atlanta showed us that there is a super high ceiling for Drake London. third in first read share. He was fifth in target share. He was ninth in usage last year. And then in our 3-game sample with Michael Penix, because we do need to mention, he did all of that stuff throughout the entirety of the season with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback for the majority of it. But with his games with Michael Penix, first in targets, seventh in receptions. He was first in yards. He was fifth in first read share. And everyone could look at the stats and go like, well, what does that mean in a 17-game sample? It's absurd numbers if you extrapolate it over a course of the entire season. It would have been over like 200 targets. Okay, like we're not expecting that kind of production from Drake London. But hey, I mean, if it happens, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. That's never going to happen. I think Drake London is one of two players in this range that can also make a jump to make a case to being one of the top players that if you were to do another startup draft the following year or 2 years from now, Drake London could find himself in the first round.
What's it for you, Cameron? Because the counterpoint I'll give to the Michael Penix 3-game sample, Giants, Commanders, Panthers, 3 teams that had terrible secondaries last year. So I'm not, obviously we're not taking a 3-game sample and extrapolating it over an 18-game season and saying, hey, look what Michael Penix can do. But that's just the slight hole I'll poke in that argument. But what's it for you, Cameron? Why is Drake London your favorite pick?
Well, before I talk about Drake London, I do want to just say I was really, really hoping Brian Thomas Jr. was a 2nd-round pick, but he goes at 112 according to Sleeper. So I was really hoping I could have snuck that in there. He would have been my pick, but
no question.
He is not a 2nd-round pick. But Drake London, I have him personally in this same tier as Amon-Ra, Puka, and Brian Thomas. I have him a tier ahead of Nico because
interesting. Okay.
Because I think that we saw, like Ty said, with Kirk Cousins, 100 receptions, 1,250 plus yards, and 9 touchdowns last year. It's like the dude is 23 years old. He's ridiculously young. Malik Neighbors is only 21. We're talking about some super young, unbelievable guys right now. And I just think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with Drake London. And if Michael Penix, the production with him is better than what we saw last year, even if it is against better teams, right? The next level for Drake London is truly elite.
So I find it fascinating that you say Drake London is a tier ahead of Nico in your eyes, because Nico is a guy I have in the same tier as an Amon-Ra, a Puka, and a Brian Thomas, despite them drafting Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel this year in the NFL draft. And I think what Higgins and Noel allow this offense to do with Nick Caley as their offensive coordinator now coming over from the Los Angeles Rams is that allows Nico to be even more efficient than he was last year. Like, sure, you can argue the volume is going to go down. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Nico is going to draw 170 plus targets this year. He might. I have no clue, but I don't think it'll be that high because of the existence of the 2 wide receivers that they drafted in the 2nd and 3rd round. But what if we got back to 80 receptions for 16 yards of reception like we got in 2023 with Nico Collins? What if we got back to that and we had that for a full 17-game season? Like, could we get like a top 5 wide receiver out of Nico Collins again? I absolutely think we could. I absolutely think we could, because I don't think Jaden Higgins is as good as a Travis Hunter, right? Though that I don't think Jaden Higgins is as good as a Devontae Adams, right? With Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
So I still see Nico in that same tier, and he's still young enough where, correct me, did Nico get a new contract yet?
He did.
He did. I was going to say, he just got a fresh contract too. So he's still hooked up with CJ Stroud here for the foreseeable future. So I still have him in that same tier. So my logic is, if I can get that dude in the 2nd round, I am perfectly content with Puka, Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas all going in the 1st round.
For sure. And he would have been, if he played all 17 games last year, he would have been the wide receiver 4. So he was,
Precisely.
He was phenomenal last year. It was really hard to hate on Nico. The more I think about it, the more you're right. I probably should have Nico up in that upper echelon as well, up in that upper tier. But yeah, the dude just does amazing things over and over again, and he's just an absolute stud out there.
Well, and Ty's shrugging over
here. That was terrible analysis. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah,
I lost what I was saying. I was trying
to save the day.
I was just going to say, Cam's got Drake London a tier ahead of Nico Collins. Lucas has Nico a tier ahead of Drake London. And some of us just have both of them in the same tier with Puka and Amon-Ra and Brian Thomas Jr. So,
which isn't an unfair assessment either. I think, I mean, it is probably Nico and Drake London kind of slotted back to back with one another. If that's where you want to make the tier break, great. Or you can make it right after Drake London as well. Oh, look, we're going to keep talking about wide receivers. Cam, you mentioned in the podcast intro, there's one position we'd love to attack early. It's because wide receivers have the most longevity, maybe outside of quarterbacks in the NFL. 3 more wide receivers here. Ty, you and I share the same opinion here. Garrett Wilson is our favorite pick in the 3rd round of Dynasty Startup Drafts. But I actually want to start with Cameron because yours is the slightly older 27-year-old AJ Brown. And I say slightly older in comparison to Garrett Wilson, not that 27 years old is old for AJ Brown. But give me your AJ Brown logic here because I was torn between him and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I think the issue we are running into with AJ Brown is we're just assuming that he's an older wide receiver. But like you said, he's not even 28 yet.
Right.
We probably have 4 more elite seasons of AJ Brown before we're talking about, a fall off here until he's 30. He's in his 31, 32 season. Last year was disappointing for AJ Brown. Similar to how I said CeeDee Lamb was disappointing, he had 16.7 fantasy points per game. This dude was a wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6 in the 2 years prior. The Eagles threw the ball less than they ever have last year, and he still has 16.7 fantasy points per game. I just lost where he was on my page. Oh, there he is. He still had over 1,000 yards in 13 games. He still had 7 touchdowns in 13 games. He is a threat every single year for 100 receptions, 1,500 yards, and double-digit touchdowns. And that's just not going to go away no matter who's playing with him, no matter where he's playing. So I think we are getting the discount of him being the older wide receiver out of this group. But really, like I said, he's still got at least 4 more years.
Which is the question I kept asking myself is what is the 4-year gap between Garrett Wilson and AJ Brown worth compared to the 4 elite years I know I'm going to get with AJ Brown versus Garrett Wilson? Honestly, like, Ty, if we're being honest with ourselves, as you and I have him as our favorite pick, we're kind of projecting this is going to work out for Garrett Wilson, are we not?
Totally. I literally wrote in my notes. I chose Wilson because I think I'm just higher on the outlook and the ceiling of this Jets offense now with Tanner Engstrand coming over from Detroit with Aaron Glenn. And I think a lot of people will look at the current situation and go, well, Justin Fields is his quarterback. I'm not sure how I feel about Justin Fields as a passer. And I think the criticism is there to a certain extent. The counterpoint is, well, look at DJ Moore in his last year with Justin Fields, and DJ Moore was a wide receiver 6 in fantasy. So that's already a pretty high ceiling. I'm not going to put those expectations on Garrett Wilson right away. But as this Jets offense can slowly start to turn around, I believe in this system. I believe that Tanner Engstrand, again, can create a system for these players to thrive in. And Garrett Wilson is already like the guy that is just going to get peppered with targets and peppered with opportunities. So I'll take the gamble on the youth with Garrett Wilson. And in this great debate with AJ Brown, AJ Brown's still a really solid player, but the usage drop off when Saquon Barkley is in town is not a coincidence. Like that was the give and take. So yes, you can make the argument that again, Philly doesn't need to run the ball as much as they did last year, but you've got Saquon Barkley in that offensive line.
You're going to run the football.
Exactly. So again, that's why I'm going to take the youth. I'm going to take the gamble on the youth, at least with Garrett Wilson. But again, there are still very, very good players in this range. Garrett Wilson just stands out the most to me.
Yeah, I'm so back and forth on these two because the thing is, I go look at the Jets depth chart. Can you name me who their wide receiver 3 is after Allen Lazard?
Is it Josh Reynolds?
I believe it is Josh Reynolds. I'm gonna go find that in the
because I think we're also looking then at like
it is
Tyler
Josh
Johnson
and Tyler Johnson.
We're looking at Malachi Corley, who wasn't even this front office pick.
Xavier Gibson's on there somewhere.
somewhere, maybe returning punts, but that's about it.
Right. So that's the other thing too, is just like compared to Devonta Smith, compared to Saquon Barkley, compared to Dallas Goedert. And I know that Eagles offense can support a multitude of weapons. But again, this is the give and take of, you know what? I think Justin Fields, I won't say might be the best quarterback that Garrett Wilson has played with. I do think it's probably Aaron Rodgers still, but Justin Fields will be the one quarterback who will just look Garrett Wilson's way almost exclusively and make sure he gets targeted the football. And it doesn't hurt that they played at Ohio State together either. So I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a rekindling there of their connection.
Yeah, I will say my last point on Air AJ Brown is, do you know what his air yard share was last year? Because he was number 1 in the NFL.
Oh, it's got to be absolutely stupid. Is it
50%
I
of
was
his
going to say,
team's
how
air
close
yard
was it to
share?
50%? Yeah,
50%.
that was my question.
So when he's on the field, he is good. But I will say the only thing that you just have to throw out there too is this is going to be his 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 years.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how much they're actually going to, they're probably not going to look to change the offense too much because it seems to be working pretty well. But that's just something to keep in mind for how the offense might, moving forward.
We're going to keep it clicking. And this is finally the range where we don't get a consensus wide receiver pick across the board. It's actually not the position that you expect. Cameron and I stuck with wide receivers. We stuck with the same wide receiver, T. Higgins at the 401. Ty, I find it fascinating that you went Drake May here at the end of the 4th round. He goes at the 412. This is, I'm not going to say a little bit rich, but I think this says how much faith and confidence you have in what Drake May can be for fantasy football. Because I don't know if I'd be looking at Drake May in the 4th round here, but clearly there's something you like in his game and what he can bring fantasy football wise that he's your favorite pick in the 4th round of startups.
I think it's just the confirmation of what we were seeing from an analysis standpoint of you need to get some protection. You need to get the guy some weapons because I'll be honest, I don't know how well you're supposed to do when your top targets are Hunter Henry, DeMario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, Austin Hooper, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, who only decided to play for like what felt like 6 games of the year. Like I think for what Drake May did, it's not the most impressive stat box or anything like that. But the things that I looked for, the rushing upside, which it's not like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type rushing production, but it's enough to give you an edge over some of these other quarterbacks that he will be finishing around, or he was projected to finish around, I should say, last year. And like I said, this front office is fully invested in Drake May. Whether you don't like the offensive line upgrades, whether you don't like Will Campbell as a tackle, whether you don't like Garrett Bradbury as a center, whether you don't like Morgan Moses as a right tackle, this offensive line is considerably better than where it was last year. Okay. And the fact too, that you are bringing in more explosive weapons. Okay. Travion Henderson is going to help out this offense. Stephon Diggs is going to help out this offense. Just a guy that's going to be able to get open for Drake May at all levels of the field. Kyle Williams, one of our favorite sleepers in fantasy, at least, or if a favorite wide receiver sleeper, I should say, when it comes to the draft class. This team is investing in Drake May. And so I'm not expecting this New England offense to take a ginormous leap in year 1 under Josh McDaniels. But what I am investing in is that this offense is slowly going to grow and mature, and that Drake May, with the rushing upside, can crack into that like top 10, pushing top 8 quarterbacks. Because again, I believe in the arm. I believe in his skill set can turn into fantasy production.
I think this comes down to a dynasty philosophy for me. And it's not that I love Drake May. I think Drake May is going to be phenomenal this year. I wouldn't be surprised if once I'm done with my projections for the upcoming season, Drake May ends up being a top 10 quarterback for me. I think how I view it, though, is if I'm drafting in a startup, I am putting less emphasis on the quarterback because I know the quarterback position is the hardest to value, but unless if I'm getting a Josh Allen, a Jaden Daniels, a Lamar Jackson, or Jalen Hurts, I feel like there's guys I can just scoop up along the way and be filler for me until the opportunity to draft a Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen in a rookie draft comes along, right? Like, I'm content, not to spoil a guy who we'll talk about later, but like, I'm good with Dak Prescott as my dynasty starting quarterback. And I'll keep throwing darts I've done this in our dynasty. Like, I have Dak Prescott as my quarterback. I've thrown darts at Anthony Richardson at the end of the 1st round in a single quarterback league. I threw a dart at Caleb Williams at the end of the first round in a Dynasty Startup League. These guys who I think have super high upside ceilings in fantasy football, I'm just going to throw darts at them while I have an older and productive quarterback who can kind of hold down the fort for my team. Not that I don't think Drake May is a bad pick at that range. It's just a philosophy thing for me. And that's why I just don't prefer Drake May at that range, because there's upside where he could elevate himself to, like year 2, year 3, Justin Herbert, where he was finishing as a top 3 guy in fantasy. I'm just not comfortable taking him at 412 without knowing that's the outcome I'm actually going to get. I don't know if that's the case for you too, Cameron, but maybe wrap up our Drake May thoughts.
Yeah, I struggle to call him the best, but I do see the upside, right? Because he was on a 17-game pace to have more rushing yards than Kyler Murray and Josh Allen last year.
Totally.
So the rushing upside's there, right? He could be Josh Allen-esque for fantasy football. Am I saying he is going to be Josh Allen? No. Do not come in the comments and say, my gosh, he just called Drake May.
Compared him to Josh Allen.
I did not. I said he could be for fantasy in a fantasy way. Yes. Is he going to have 15 rushing touchdowns in a year? No. But could he have 7 or 8 with 500 to 600 rushing yards? Absolutely, he could. And could he be a guy that we could see 25 to 30 passing touchdowns from? Absolutely. So if that is his career path, this is the cheapest you will ever get him. So I understand it from that perspective. But I do agree. It's just hard for me looking sometimes at the wide receivers around him right now to go, this is where I want to take a quarterback.
Well, and especially when Baker Mayfield was left for dead in a lot of one quarterback leagues. And now he's gone back-to-back seasons as a top 10 quarterback, right? Is there guys you can find along the way to kind of, fill the void on your team until you have the opportunity to use a rookie pick on Drake May instead of, a 4th round startup pick, which is a valuable asset because Cameron, there's guys like T Higgins going in this range.
Yeah.
And you and I are big fans of T Higgins here. He's both of our favorite picks. So what goes into it for you?
Yeah. It's just the fact that we finally saw it from T last year. We finally saw a wide receiver 1 performance, in points per game. Obviously he only played 12 games, which some of you are going to say is a knock on T Higgins. The fact that he's never healthy. Fair. It's been hard to argue with that because he just has never been healthy, but 18.5 fantasy points per game, 73 receptions, 10 touchdowns last year. Him, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow are together for the next 4 seasons, and the Bengals have no money to make any actual additions to their weapons. So it's like, these are your guys, and he is a very solidified role in an offense that has to score points if they want this team to stay competitive. So this is buying in on the T Higgins dip, or not dip from old, right? So we're kind of on the come up now. We were really excited, then we had a couple seasons that were rough, and then we saw the bump, and so now I think this is here to stay. So if it is here to stay, right, I still think you're getting him at a value. But yeah, the fact that he was that good with as good as Jamar Chase was last year makes me realize I don't care how good Jamar Chase is. T Higgins can still get his.
He's still attached to Joe Burrow. Yeah. Last year, 6 of his 12 games that he played, 17 plus fantasy points. And I'm actually going to call it 18 because the one game that he technically didn't score 18, he was at 17.9. So we're going to call it half of his games. He had at least 18 fantasy points in PPR formats. You keep this continuity with Joe Burrow in an offense that wants to throw the football with a Joe Burrow that could easily be putting up MVP numbers here for the next 3 to 5 years. I just want guys who are attached to Joe Burrow. Like I said in the intro, draft good players on good teams. T Higgins is a good player on a good team. The really only knock you can put on him is, you already said it, Cameron, just cannot stay healthy. But you know what? If I'm attacking wide receivers in the early rounds of my Dynasty startup drafts and I go 3 wide receivers in the first 4 rounds, like I'm okay with T Higgins being my wide receiver 3 because I know I have at least 2 other stud wide receivers that can hold down the fort if T Higgins needs to miss 2-3 weeks at a time. People might say that's just bad investment strategy. I get it. But to which I then say, just wait till T Higgins strings together 2-3 years of fully healthy seasons, which may not ever happen. I fully realize that. But when it does finally happen, T Higgins is just going to be one of those guys where it's like, man, okay, he really is that dude. And we were just already in on it before he actually strung those seasons together. We're going to keep it moving here because we got a lot of rounds to go through, fellas. Round 5, Cameron, you and I both, we're just on a roll here picking the same players. We both have Kenneth Walker. Ty, you have Xavier Worthy. A fascinating one to me because I like Xavier Worthy But you also have Rashee Rice coming back this year. Travis Kelce's going to retire soon, which I'm sure you bring up in your notes. You add Jalen Royals to this offense as well. Hollywood Brown comes back for a year, but only a year. I'll quit stealing your thunder. Why is Xavier Worthy your pick here out of all the players you could draft in round 5?
This offense is Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. Like that's this offense. This run game with Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, and Elijah Mitchell now and Brashard Smith. When you take that many running backs, you know what that tells me? You have no idea how your running back room is going to turn out, and you're just going to let best man win. That's exactly what it means. Okay, like you said, Travis Kelce's getting older. He'll still be yeah. I just think Xavier Worthy, to put it simply, yes, he took advantage of a lot of his opportunities with Rashee Rice out of the lineup, but the skill set in this Kansas City offense, with the design touches that this guy gets, end arounds, screens, all of that stuff, Xavier Worthy's speed is what this offense has wanted. And yes, Rashee Rice is going to get his, but Xavier Worthy can get his too. And if we're honest, there needs to be a deep threat in this offense. Why can't it be Xavier Worthy? Why can't it be when they need a big play downfield? Why can't it be Xavier Worthy? So the fact that you're in the Chiefs offense, you're connected with Mahomes for at least the next 4 years because you're a first-round draft pick. I just think there is a ton of upside for Xavier Worthy. And he may not be the most ideal kind of like alpha, or not alpha receiver, but like when you think Xavier Worthy, you're like, can I really rely on him week in, week out? Yes, you can, because speed wins all over the field, and they will do whatever it takes to get him the ball.
I will say Xavier Worthy is my favorite wide receiver pick in this round. So you have Chris Olave. You have Xavier Worthy then at 503. Zay Flowers, 504. Emeka Egbuka, 506. DJ Moore, 507. And then Jordan Addison at the 511. Like, I think you could say Xavier Worthy actually deserves to be closer to Devonta Smith at the 409. If you want to go all the way up to Rome Odunze at the 402, right? Like, I think you could slot Xavier Worthy in any of those spots and say, like, actually, I might be getting a full round value on Xavier Worthy with this pick. So I really don't disagree. I just found it fascinating that, like, this was the route you chose to go. Out of all the players you could have access to in this tier, or maybe even specifically like a TJ Hawkinson, who I heavily considered at the 512 in this range. I think we're TJ Hawkinson's still a young guy. We're a full year removed from that ACL now. I think that volume is still going to be there in the Vikings offense. I think he'll be one of JJ McCarthy's best friends as he gets acclimated to the Kevin O'Connell passing attack. But ultimately, Cam, you and I went with Ken Walker. I think it's cool to hate Ken Walker now. After people wanted to love him through the first 6 weeks of the year where he was the RB2. RB2, he top 5 running back in fantasy football. He was catching all sorts of passes. And now it's just cool to hate Kenneth Walker, because apparently it's cool to hate Joe Mixon when they're on fire for one half of the season. They get banged up with injury, or the second half of the season comes, the offensive line starts to fail them a little bit, like both Ken Walker and Joe Mixon had. I just think Ken Walker is too good of a running back to be going at the 508. Like, I still love Ken Walker. I think I'll let you go, because I could sit here and talk about Ken Walker all day.
Yeah, it's the fact that he's 24 years old, that we have a lot of Ken Walker left. It's the fact that, he's been a productive running back. I will say he has not been an efficient running back. That has been my knock on Kenneth Walker so far. But as we're kind of going through the rounds, what made him this pick for me is it feels like the running backs, as far as guys who have starting roles, start to drop off pretty quick here. As far as guys I could see having a starting job for the next 2-3 seasons, it drops off pretty quick for me. Now, is Kenneth Walker necessarily going to be a Seattle Seahawk next year? That I'm not 100% sure on, right? They have Zach Charbonnet, they have Damian Martinez. So I understand that, but I think he's good enough. I think that he's young enough that he's going to find a starting role elsewhere. Maybe it'll be a little bit more of a timeshare. But let's be honest, at this point in the NFL, there's maybe 10, maybe 12 running backs that you're not in a timeshare with. Right. And that might even be way too high. So you're just trying to find a guy who can find a starting role. And we saw from Kenneth Walker, he showed he can do it all, because the knock's been he can't catch passes. Well, to start the season last year, he caught all the passes. So I like him right here. I think, again, 24 years old. He's got plenty of time. He's got 3-4 more seasons ahead of him, which in running back time is a lot. So Yeah, at the 508, it just felt like this was your last chance to get a starting caliber running back.
And even if he isn't a Seahawk, he's too talented to not be a Josh Jacobs, a Joe Mixon kind of player where they're done with their first team, they go to their second team, and it actually ends up being a really good spot. I just believe in the talent of Kenneth Walker too much based on what I saw coming out. And the biggest problem with this Seattle offense last year, they couldn't block for him, right? So what do? In the NFL, they didn't do much in free agency, which I was pretty pissed off about. But what did they do in free agency or in the NFL draft? Excuse me, first round pick went out and drafted Gray Zabel, who is a dream fit in this Clint Kubiak zone scheme, by the way, which Kenneth Walker absolutely will thrive in. They're expecting big things out of Kenneth Walker in Clint Kubiak's zone run scheme. They also drafted, Bryce Cable out of Kansas. He's a guard. Mason Richmond was a 7th round pick. I'm not going to act like he's a difference maker. Same with Bryce in the 6th round, but they at least have paid attention, right? They said we want Kenneth Walker to be involved. We're going to at least give him some chance to succeed in this offense. So I agree. I think it drops off after this round. That's why I would rather try and scoop Kenneth Walker now, scoop a running back in this round, rather than continue to wait, and then you're stuck with like Chuba Hubbard in the 8th round, which sneaky like that pick too, but not exactly a guy I want to be walking into my dynasty team with as the RB1. Ty, it looks like you have like a little bit of like a counter punch ready to come here.
I just worry that this Seattle offensive experiment, if you want to call it that, with Sam Darnold and this offensive line,
it's an experiment,
falls flat on its face. And if that happens, like Kenneth Walker showed last year, thankfully, that he's got some receiving upside. So it wouldn't be the end of the world for Kenneth Walker. But my worry, and I believe why he's probably going as late as he is because he's kind of stuck in this purgatory of, well, we're not going to rank him with the other running backs that go after him because he's better and he's got more experience than those guys, but we can't put him with the guys above because we haven't exactly seen him put it all together for an entire season. So I think Kenneth Walker every player is a risk, but I think Kenneth Walker is the definition of a risk after your first 4 rounds. And you're looking at, okay, I need to find guys that have good upside still, but will also have good production right away. Because like we were talking about earlier, Emeka Egbuka is in his range. Caleb Johnson goes a little after RJ Harvey. Like we start mixing in the rookies, right? So you're looking for production with upside still. And I'm just not sure it's as straightforward as we want. Like if it hits, it absolutely hits. I want to say that. But if it doesn't work out, Kenneth Walker will surely find himself with running backs that go lower than him because, again, the upside case is just no longer there.
We'll keep it moving along here. Round 6. We're in consensus. We're in lockstep here. Look at all that Jalen Waddle on your screen in round 6. It's also cool to hate Jalen Waddle right now. I'll tell you what, though, out of the guys I look at in round 6, I look at Jalen Waddle and I say he's the most talented. He's in the most explosive offense. I'm just going to buy the dip here after 2 years of down seasons. Then I don't know what else you two want to add on to that, but that's what it is for me. I'm still a believer in Jalen Waddle. I know it's somewhat dependent on Tua being healthy, but to me, to scoop a talent like Jalen Waddle in the 6th round still feels like a really good value in startup drafts.
Yeah, I mean, he's 26, right? So it's not like he's towards the end of his career. He's 5 years younger than Tyreek Hill is right now. If you're worried about Tua, if Tua's not healthy this year, you got to feel them. They're going to start looking at other options, right?
Yeah, Quinn Ewers.
So, yeah. Exactly. I mean,
just a guy I want throwing Jalen Waddle the football.
I mean,
the hyper-accurate Quinn Ewers.
He made Matthew Golden the 1st round pick. So I don't know what we're talking about, but this is a guy who was wide receiver 13, wide receiver 8 in his first 2 years in the NFL. Right, that's not a fluke. He didn't just lose the talent all of a sudden.
No,
their offense included throwing screens to Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane last year. I don't think that's going to continue if Mike McDaniel wants a job moving forward. So I think they're going to look to actually get good playmakers involved. Achane's a good playmaker. I love Jonnu, but if I had to choose, I would give the ball to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle over Jonnu. And then Tyreek Hill's situation is if he's a Dolphin at the end of this year or going into next season, I would be shocked. So from a dynasty perspective, Waddle's moving towards being the wide receiver one of this offense.
And he got paid as such, right? He's got the bag. What other icing on the cake do you want to put on, Ty?
I didn't realize. Well, no. I'm just looking at Tyreek's contract, and I had no idea that it's not necessarily that the team needs to trade him. They can completely cut ties with him, and it's just $15 million on dead cap, which is still quite a bit in the grand scheme of things. But if Tyreek is that much of a headache, I think they will swallow $15 million just to move on and try to. I don't want to say salvage what they've got, but like,
no, yeah.
Again, we all have this general feeling that Tyreek is probably not going to be on the team, and even if he is, it's just one more year. But in the immediate, the contingent upside of Jalen Waddle, if something were to happen to Tyreek, injury or suspension, whatever it is, Jalen Waddle is then the guy. Because next up in this wide receiver room, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine.
Heck yeah. One hit wonder. One hit
Oof.
Nick. One hit wonder Nick.
DFS legend, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I just think in this range, I think the price has dropped far enough to say, like, okay, things will get right in Miami. But I totally get you. If you're scared off by Tua in the injuries, I can't fault you. I can't argue against you, because we've seen now multiple years how much this offense relies on Tua.
Let's take a quick break here from our friends over at Underdog, what they have going on this summer, and we'll be back afterwards. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We've gone through the first 6 rounds, our favorite picks in the first half of Dynasty startup drafts. Let's get into the back half, fellas. Now, I recognize Dynasty drafts are much longer than 12 rounds, but we only have so much time to talk, right? So we went through 12, figure that's enough. From there, you can take your preferences on players. But in round 7, Cam, I'll come back to our player, because I think you and I will never give up on this player, no matter how much people want to hate him. You and I just love the players that people love to hate.
Yes.
But Ty, your pick is fascinating to me because it's Luther Burden III, rookie to the Chicago Bears this year in the second round of the NFL draft. What makes him your favorite pick in the 7th round? I was a little bit shocked when I saw this one.
Can I say it? I think this is the future Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Chicago offense.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think Luther Burden. Did you say I'm going for the bait?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What bait? What bait is there?
Engagement bait.
Oh, totally.
Bait farming.
We engage.
We're gonna clip that and put that
like
on socials
crazy.
everywhere. Luther Burden, the new Amon-Ra St. Brown in the NFC North.
Yeah, I would take him as early as the 4th round, to be honest. We can also throw that into the clip then too.
Stop.
No, again, I think Luther Burden, I think the how do I say this? It won't take as long for him to get onto the field as people think. I don't think that this Bears offense needs DJ Moore. And I think after what we saw last year with DJ Moore, I know that a lot of the issues came down to Caleb holding onto the ball for a little too long and all that stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence that Keenan Allen quickly became Caleb Williams' favorite target. And I think Luther Burden can take over for that DJ Moore role sooner than we think. And when that happens, when you've got Rome Odunze on the outside, Luther Burden can clean up all the short and all the short stuff from the slot, but he can also be a downfield threat as well. The scary thing for Luther Burden going into the draft was where is he going to land? Because if he was going to land in a situation where you've got a mediocre play caller or a mediocre offensive system, that's going to be tough to buy in on. But arguably landing with one of the more genius play callers in Ben Johnson with Caleb Williams as your quarterback for the foreseeable future, yeah, you're going to need to kind of swallow the first year, maybe 2 of limited playing time. But then after that, it's all systems go then for Luther Burden.
I named this in a previous episode as well. I think we could get the case of another San Francisco 49er situation here where it's, oh, not all these guys can touch the ball. Not all of them can be fantasy relevant. There's too many of them with CMC and Kittle and Ayuk and Debo. And then the next thing we know, they're both top 20 wide receivers. George Kittle's a top 5 tight end. CMC is the overall running back 1. Like, I'm not playing that game with Ben Johnson. I'm not jumping to that conclusion, but I think people are just like ready to bury Luther Burden. It's like, well, he's number 4 behind Loveland and DJ Moore and Rome. And I think my response to that is, could we be a little bit more open-minded to what the ceiling of this could be too? I'm not promising the ceiling, but I could see why you would like him here in the 7th. I think it's a little rich for me just not knowing entirely what the Chicago Bears offense is going to be under Ben Johnson. But if you're drafting for the ceiling, then Luther Burden could potentially be a 7th round steal. Absolutely. Cam, I'll come back to you. I'll let you look. Probably your favorite person to talk about in all of fantasy football is the person that people love to hate the most because he's short. He plays a lot of Call of Duty. All right. So go ahead. Tell the people why we love Kyler Murray, because really all the dude does is finish as a top 12 fantasy quarterback and people just don't want to love him for it.
Yeah. I mean, he was 18 fantasy points per game again last year. Another disappointing
year. That's his standard. Like that. Print it this year. 18 fantasy points per game.
You know who else had 18 fantasy points per game last year? Patrick Mahomes, who's going 3 rounds earlier. So like his floor is the same as Mahomes, except he had 572 rushing yards again last year. The connection between him and Marvin Harrison was not good. From all like NFL standards, this offense and everything except for Trey McBride was not great. And yet he was still 18 fantasy points per game. He was still, right on the edge of where'd he finish? Quarterback 10 on the year.
Quarterback 10, yeah.
Right. We're talking about down years where he's still a top 10 quarterback. So I would be shocked, if he can, we don't see him start to come back a little bit. We don't see those numbers start to come up a little bit. You're betting on that. But again, this is buying the dip on Kyler Murray. Buy the dip on rushing quarterbacks because they have a floor. They have a very high floor. We talk about that, like the opposite with Tua. Doesn't have a very high floor. And we're looking at a guy who, when he had a phenomenal season, barely touched 18 fantasy points per game.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud, phenomenal season last year. What was he? He had a rough year.
I was going to say, last year wasn't phenomenal for CJ Stroud.
13.7 fantasy points per game for CJ Stroud. That's the floor when you don't have rushing
right.
upside.
But he kept crashing down. Right, yes. Exactly.
And he's still going ahead of Kyler right now. So that's just where it's like, all right, if you're like, kind of like me and Lucas were like, Drake May's a little rich here. Kyler Murray is the guy that you grab then in the 7th round.
I have nothing to add to that. It's just, we have to separate the memeability of these players and their teams from actual fantasy production, which Kyler Murray is giving you. I get it's not flashy. I get it's not Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts level. But man, you know what? Like, Cam, you named it perfectly. Why are we putting Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray so far apart when we now have 3 years of Patrick Mahomes disappointing, like flat out disappointing fantasy managers? I just don't understand that when you have the mobile upside of Kyler Murray. So I have nothing else to add on to that. We are in lockstep there. Round 8 gets really weird for us and for the draft board in general, because you can choose to go running back here. I mentioned Chuba Hubbard goes in the 8th round. He was almost my pick. He goes at the 8-11. You can go wide receiver, young or old. I went Josh Downs. Cameron went Chris Godwin. Or Ty could go your route. You took J.J. McCarthy, who, again, I'm a little bit surprised this is your pick here. I'm guessing this is just that strong of an endorsement for the Kevin O'Connell passing offense after what we saw from Sam Darnold last year.
With a little bit of rushing upside as well, because
don't ignore that.
I'm just saying, I think JJ McCarthy, boy can scoot. Look, I think maybe the best way to explain it is this: Joe Milton averaged 19 fantasy points a game last year, which is more than Kyler Murray, and JJ McCarthy.
No way. Analysis. I would say no way you're throwing out Joe Milton. I was not going to let that fly. Oh
in
man,
one game.
I would have kicked you off permanently for that.
I liked it.
Thanks. Bad analysis, bros. Maybe we need to rebrand
Bad analysis, bros. The Babs.
The Babs.
Oh, man. For me, what it comes down to for JJ McCarthy, not only youth, but in the mobility that he has. When you look at quarterbacks that go after him, very few quarterbacks have as good of a situation and as good as a receiving core that JJ McCarthy has, right? I mean, we're talking about Brock Purdy, Kim Ward, Trevor Lawrence, obviously. Like, that's probably one of the exceptions there with Travis Hunter now and Brian Thomas Jr., Bryce Young, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott. Like, there are very few quarterbacks starting with JJ. Actually, really, it's Michael Penix, really, because he goes about 3 picks before.
Yeah.
You look at the rest of the quarterbacks and you're like, is there anyone that can like come through with their current situation? And JJ McCarthy is one of them. On top of that, and like you said, this is just a Kevin O'Connell handpicked quarterback. Like, that has to mean something. Does it not? Like, that has to mean something. So I get that quarterback may not be the most obvious position to kind of go with there in the 8th round. But I think, again, like I said, I just think your pickings get really, really slim. And when you're in a draft with like 12 other guys or 12 other people, I should say, like, I don't know if you can exactly bank on just waiting on quarterbacks, because what if you run into 6 other people that are doing the exact same thing?
Well, then he lets quarterback slide. But no. I digress. We don't get into theory on that. But I think, again, this is another pick where you're drafting for the hopeful upside of what Kevin O'Connell can bring you and what JJ McCarthy can bring you with his legs as well. So I don't hate that. I don't hate the pick to any extent whatsoever. Cam, what makes you want to go Chris Godwin here over a guy like Josh Downs? They're only 3 picks apart. Godwin's older, coming off of an injury. I went Downs here because we saw he could be the focal point of this Colts offense, albeit not a high-powered Colts offense. But to me, I think he's the best wide receiver there in Indianapolis. We've seen him be successful for a stretch of games at a time, not to level of Chris Godwin necessarily, but what makes you go Chris Godwin here over at Josh Downs?
So I understand there's a lot of negatives for Chris Godwin this offseason, like you said. I mean, he's 29 now, coming off an ankle injury. Emeka Egbuka just drafted there. And I understand he only played, 7 games last year?
Yeah.
He was the wide receiver 2 in points per game with 19.7. I mean, the dude was cooking. Now, obviously, career year for Baker. They lose their offensive coordinator. Like, I understand that there was a lot that went into that, but I think the narrative that Chris Godwin, like, we just got to just kind of push him to the wayside because Emeka's there, I just am not buying into that. And 8-12 is, we're starting to get to the point where I'm okay now. I'm taking bets on the upside. And I think if Chris Godwin comes back healthy, we're talking about a guy again who's a top 20 wide receiver for probably the next 2 seasons. That's where I see Chris Godwin. I understand that there is a lot of downside that comes with it. If he doesn't come back healthy, Emeka looks great right away. He get replaced pretty quickly, but he did just get $60 million. So, like, it's not like they have nothing invested into him that they can just kind of cut bait on. So I think it's just all of that put together, and I'm willing to take the chance here on Chris Godwin.
Which is fair. I think I'm not quite ready to get to the vet range yet and start investing in vets. I just don't know if Chris Godwin is the vet I want to invest on a young team. Typically, I like to look younger and then build older from there, but there's a guy we'll talk about in a bit who I think it fits the better bill of what I'd be looking for a young championship competing team. We'll move to round 9, though. Cam, you and I just can't seem to stop making the same picks here because you and I both have slick Rick Pearsall of the San Francisco 49ers. Ty, you have your guy, Jaden Higgins. Maybe in like, this is such a weird round because it's all young wide receivers. I want to make sure I'm getting this right. It's mostly young wide receivers that don't have much upside, or like middle of the road wide receivers that like aren't quite elite, but are old enough where you're not too like appealed by the longevity. So what makes you go Jaden Higgins here, Ty, in the 9th round? And let's try and keep it short here because we got a few more rounds to get through before we got to wrap this thing up.
This is also, should I start over quick?
Just start there. Yep, just start now.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. I think the biggest selling point for me is not only is he going to be in this Houston Texans offense playing opposite of Nico Collins, but you've got the Nick Caley aspect into this, that you're getting this kind of Rams offense infiltrating Houston now, where Jaden Higgins is going to be on the field almost at all times alongside Nico Collins. Now, is Jaden Higgins going to, dominate in target share? Is he going to lead the team in target share or anything like that? No, that's obviously going to be Nico Collins. But Jaden Higgins is a guy on the outside that's going to have plenty of red zone upside, I will say. And I am just going to say I'm higher on this Texans offense in this range of players that does include some good offenses. But I think that this Houston offense can definitely rebound, and to the point where Jaden Higgins, can be looked at as like a top 36, top 30 guy.
Cam, you and I both in on Slick Rick here. What's his upside in the San Francisco 49ers offense? A very different team. Not as good of a defense anymore. The offensive line is not the same. You also have Brandon Ayuk coming off of an ACL. No more Deebo Samuel. I just see like a way where the 49ers might be playing behind in more games than we expect. Brock Purdy's really going to need to prove that he's worth another contract, or that he's worth a second contract. Not another one. Worth a second contract. I just see a very clear path here where former first-round pick Slick Rick Pearsall ends up being, the wide receiver of the future for this team.
Yeah, it really does feel like that. It feels like at the same time too, San Francisco is just not excited about Brandon Ayuk. I mean, there was trade rumors already about Brandon Ayuk, and he just signed a contract. I mean, the amount of dead cap they would have had to eat to get rid of him is ridiculous. But like you said, he's coming off an ACL tear. We like Juwan Jennings, but let's be honest about Juwan Jennings. He's 29 years old, right? It's not like we're looking at a guy who's going to be a, steady wide receiver one moving forward. George Kittle's going to be around for a little while longer, but he's still getting older. CMC's 28, coming off double Achilles tendonitis. So there's a lot of ifs surrounding San Francisco. And so the question is then, like, could Ricky sneak his way into, we're talking about him almost as the wide receiver one in this offense? And I think there is a path for that. Now, do I think that he's going to be the wide receiver one, game 3 this year? No, but a year, 2 years down the road, right? He goes from wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 1 in this offense. And you're talking about, hey, we brought really low on Ricky, and now we're starting to see the investment. Again, this is a dynasty move. Do not expect in your redraft leagues that all of a sudden he's a wide receiver 1. But that's kind of what I'm buying, the vision I'm buying into with Ricky.
Yeah, and I don't know if he necessarily actually gets to be the wide receiver 1 of this team at any point, but we've seen the wide receiver 2 play a valuable role in the San Francisco 49ers offense, and I think he at least can get to that point. Like, that path is much more clear to me than Slick Rick's going to be the best wide receiver on this team 3 years from now. I don't know if I totally buy into that, but he'll at least be wide receiver 2, I imagine, and that is worth something. Round 10. This is where I'm interested in the vets now. I want Davante Adams. Give me all the Davante Adams in the 10th round. If I'm building a young team with a bunch of competitors early on, I am a believer that I need at least 1 or 2 vets to help take me over the top and get me to that championship. Davante Adams is exactly the guy I want in this Los Angeles Rams passing attack. It's him and Puka Nacua. Look, Kyren Williams, not the most efficient rusher. Maybe that changes this year. But what I know for sure is that Matthew Stafford is back. He's going to be slinging the rock around the yard. I have seen both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua eat in this offense, and frankly, I think Davante Adams might have more juice than Cooper Kupp does at this point in his career. So I love Davante Adams in the 10th round. Absolutely. If I'm going out and want to win a chip with a young team for the future, Davante Adams is exactly the guy I want to be investing in. And Ty, you agree. I don't mean to not get your thoughts in here, but I do want to make sure we get to the last couple of rounds here. Cam, you have DeAndre Swift here, who's just kind of like left for dead to fantasy managers. Everyone thought Chicago's drafting a running back. They don't. DeAndre Swift's still the lead dog there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, at the very least, I get a year where he's Ben Johnson's lead running back. Yeah, and if the whole narrative is Ben Johnson hates DeAndre Swift, maybe he still does. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm willing to take that chance to have the running back 1 in Ben Johnson's system here. I think that's where, we really could see a big year for DeAndre Swift. And if I only get 1 big year out of him, for me as a 10th round pick, I think that's worth it.
It's a 10th round dart throw. Yeah. You're not dissatisfied with that in any capacity. And you know what? If they do bring someone in, DeAndre Swift will probably still end up playing like a Robin role to whoever they bring in, if I had to guess. Maybe he falls off entirely, TBD, depends on who they bring in. Round 11, Dak Prescott. Can I just speak for all of us here? This is stupid. This is stupid ADP. This is memeable. I mean, this is it. People love memeing Dak Prescott. They love memeing the Dallas Cowboys. You got to separate the memeability of Dak Prescott and the Cowboys from Dak Prescott, what he provides you for fantasy football. Okay? Dak Prescott is a walking top 10 fantasy quarterback. That's all he's done in his career. Go look it up. I won't list the numbers for you because I don't want to bore you. But this is just stupid in the 11th round. How old is Dak? Is he 30 yet?
31.
He's 31. So you don't have a ton of time here with Dak Prescott. I'm not saying you've got like a JJ McCarthy, obviously, but man, again, I named it earlier. This is the kind of quarterback I'm looking to bridge until I find a Drake May, until I find, we'll say like a Caleb Williams, if he ends up panning out, until we find, who knows, maybe Cam Ward, right? Dak Prescott is the ideal guy I want to look to bridge my team until I can compete and find one of those guys at the end of the first round and be set up for the future. Round 12, we'll wrap it up here. Ty, you and I both liked Mason Taylor coming out of LSU. He's your pick here in the 12th round. Give me your brief thoughts on him.
Similar to Garrett Wilson in the sense that I'm just higher on this Jets offense, and I think Mason Taylor can play a Sam Laporta type role. Yep. Tanner Engstrand, his start in Detroit, the tight ends coach. Wonder if he's got the eyes for some good tight end play, and I think Mason Taylor certainly fills that void.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal connection there. Naming the former tight ends coach there in Detroit. You have to love the upside of Mason Taylor with the bloodline as well. That's not like, I don't want like the bloodline to be the reason why he's going to be successful, but that certainly can't hurt things based on his profile and the team he's been drafted to and the coaching staff he's going to as well. Cam, you ultimately went to Tyjae Spears here. This is just simply value on running back pick mixed with Tony Pollard. What goes into it for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's always the opportunity with Tony Pollard getting, older, that Tyjae Spears takes over more of this backfield. We've seen the receiving upside from him. He's only 24 years old. He's 2 years under contract on a team that's, with Cam Ward, that's going to try and help Ward out as much as possible. And that could come through the run game. That could come through running back catching, receptions out of the backfield. This team just doesn't have very good weapons overall. Like they're just kind of, yeah. So someone's got to help out Cam Ward. And I think Tyjae Spears is going to be the guy to do that.
Well, go ahead, Ty. Yeah, go ahead. Throw your counterpunch.
Oh, no, there's no counterpunch. It's just a dig that some people here invested in Treylon Burks and seeing how that paid off for him.
Even though Michael Pittman is trash, I'm still winning that trade 2 years later. Let's go, baby. Go ahead. You got nothing to say back?
It's just brutal. I can't defend that one. I mean, the dude just fell off the face of the earth. It's brutal.
He did. You took a chance. And that's okay. Yeah. We all do as dynasty managers. But hey, that's why we're here. We're going to help you learn from our mistakes. We'll give you a little bit of our insight along the way. So again, if you love fantasy football content, not just dynasty, but redraft, best ball content as well, this is the place you want to be. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. Come join the 13% that are subscribed and actually watch our videos. If you're part of that 87% who watches and aren't subscribed yet, you can change that right now. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, hit that little thumbs up button down there too. We greatly appreciate that. We'll be back later this week with the worst picks in every round of your Dynasty Startup drafts. You can follow our other socials in the meantime. FFLs on Twitter, the FFLs on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook, and TikTok. I am at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw FFF for Cameron, _class. Again, we'll be back on Thursday. Worst picks in every round of your Dynasty Startup drafts. See you then. Deuces.
Deuces.